Kremlin observers say the questions in the annual phone-in are heavily vetted, but Mr. Putin was asked early on whether there were Russian troops fighting in Ukraine.
I tell you straight and clearly, there are no Russian troops in Ukraine.
His forceful answer was aimed at convincing a worried public, says Christian Nitoyu of the Ideas Policy Group at the London School of Economics.
There have been recently more and more images of Russian soldiers coming back in coffins, Russian soldiers being injured, being treated in secret hospitals, and the Russian society is increasingly becoming aware of this. And Putin knows that it is increasingly harder to actually keep this hidden.
President Putin accused the government in Kyiv of deliberately cutting off the eastern Donbass region. He also returned to a theme he has spoken about on several occasions.
I do not differentiate at all between Ukrainians and Russians. I believe they are the same people.
That's part of the recurring narrative from the Kremlin, says Nicholas Redman of the International Institute for Strategic Studies.
He actually likened Poroshenko's election to a non-violent coup, unlike the violent one which ousted Yanukovych. So there's plenty there still to unsettle about Russian attitudes to Ukraine and Russian intentions.
President Putin's concept of one people in Russia and Ukraine also validates his foreign policy, says Christian Nitoyu.
Because if all Ukrainians are Russians, then Russia really has a concrete motive to be engaged in Ukraine.
Russia's economy is struggling because of plunging oil prices and US and European Union sanctions. Mr. Putin said the measures were aimed at containing Russia.
It is unlikely that we should expect lifting of the sanctions because it is a purely political issue.
President Putin criticized the United States for not treating Russia as an equal partner. White House spokesman Josh Earnest gave this response.
What's also true is that there are expectations for influential world powers. One of those expectations is that they are going to respect the borders of sovereign countries.
Overall, Mr. Putin tried to walk a fine line, says Nicholas Redman.
On the one hand, saying Russia is a country under siege, Russia is a country under sanctions, Ukraine is a country that's run by a fascist dictatorship that is actually taking many of its orders from the United States. But on the other hand, we wait for our partners to come back to our senses, and we're not ready to be dragged into a Cold War.
While there were clear messages for Western capitals, analysts say the bulk of Mr. Putin's more than 4-hour phone-in was aimed at the Russian population, which gives the president an approval rating of over 80%. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Явное желание достичь компромисса по этой иранской ядерной программе.